We have prepared a stellar lineup of amazing speakers who are joining us to share their experiences, personal and professional. We do want to note that this will be a powerful conversation and thought leadership on how to ensure the LGBTQIA plus community members have the support and space to be authentic decision makers, as well as adding the diversity that companies are in need of for their own growth. Now, these speakers have walked the talk, embedding DEI in the DNA of every organization they've touched. And we are incredibly delighted and excited to have them join us today. According to a June 2020 McKinsey report, corporate America has played an important role in the progress of LGBTQIA plus rights over the past 2 decades, with many companies making public gestures of support. A record 206 major corporations signed an amicus brief advocating for the Supreme Court's June 2020 decision protecting LGBTQIA plus individuals from workplace discrimination. However, this outward visibility does not eliminate the many persistent challenges, including underrepresentation, isolation, and effects on career progression facing this community in the workplace. One of the key recommendations identified to rectify this is for companies to proactively highlight their support for the LGBTQIA plus community to help ensure that prospective employees feel safe. They can also adopt a blind resume screening, removing names, gender signifiers, and affinity group affiliations to reduce the role of unconscious bias in the hiring process. They can also additionally strengthen employee resource groups by offering dedicated resources for LGBTQIA plus employees, particularly the women and trans employees who are at times overlooked in employee resource groups. Here to speak with us today is a leader in the networking space who has leveraged his wealth of professional and personal experience to establish proper foundation for this community in a variety of networks through his previous work by developing an ERG dedicated to the LGBTQIA plus community at LinkedIn. Mark Menke is a senior marketing leader at LinkedIn in San Francisco. He leads a global account-based marketing program designed for talent acquisition, HR, and DEI leaders that blends thought leadership, innovation, and experiences. He's passionate about the intersection of community, design, innovation, diversity, inclusion, and creativity. As a result, his career intentionally has blended social impact, the arts, talent acquisition, customer success, marketing, and strategic human-centered design. He's also the former global communications chair for the Out at in LGBTQIA plus employee resource group. Mark holds a master's in strategic design and management from Parsons The New School and a BA in journalism from Marquette University. Please help me welcome Mark to our virtual stage. Hi,
Thanks,
Mark.
Lana. How are you? Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. May I just say we love your background. It looks fabulous. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Credit to our LinkedIn brand team for that.
Absolutely. We're going to dive right in. We really want to hear a lot more about your experience with employee resource groups, but really with a focus on your own personal journey and how you came about to identifying and finding that community.
Yeah, absolutely. And to start there, I spent a lot of time last year, during the height of the pandemic, also finishing my master's program, and my independent study capstone project was really focused around that intersection of community and identity. And so for me, as a gay man and member of the LGBTQIA plus community, those, they're forever intertwined. And just a few defining moments I thought I would share that for me really highlight where community has played a key role. And starting back in 1998, I moved here to San Francisco for the first time at the very young, wide-eyed age of 22 to do the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. But during that time, I started volunteering at this local LGBT um, arts and education nonprofit called Harvey Milk Institute in exchange for free classes, and then worked there for 4 years full time after. And didn't realize it at the time, but it was so vital to my first really finding true community here in San Francisco and within the general queer community, because it put me at the center of the community here, specifically the arts community. And I was surrounded by queer people from all walks of life. And looking back, many of them really fulfilled that much needed like mentor, older sibling role that I didn't have at home or growing up. And one thing I'll add, just reason for that is, with my generation, the generation above me, especially of other gay men, were wiped out by the AIDS epidemic. And so my generation grew up in the shadow of that, but really without a lot of those roles. And so during that time, I also got to live for the first time just very authentically and be myself. And then also, oh, go ahead, Jim.
I was just gonna say, it's just you were in search for it. You were like really, yeah.
No, absolutely, and and I found it here, and it was so, as I mentioned, just vital in shaping my development. And then 2 years ago, I had the opportunity. Was at in New York for World Pride, and it was the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, and happened to kind of walk up by the Stonewall with a group of friends, which, for those who don't know, is a bar in the West Village neighborhood. And there was this like press conference happening, and they had some of the elders who were there, at the riot, was just, reminded of that moment of history in action, and also of, the fact that I wouldn't have a lot of the, rights and freedoms I do as a gay man if not for, the folks who came before, specifically, queer women of color and queer trans women of color.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing like the history of kind of like how you were able to locate your community there. And what about at LinkedIn? I mean, you took your own personal experiences and your professional experiences, and you wanted to almost give back to that community and to what matters to you, and started an ERG, right? You were the head of the ERG at LinkedIn, Out at In, which I think is such a cool name, very unique. For a while, I thought it was LinkedIn, right? But Out at In, I love that.
Yeah.
Tell us about what that role required out of you, and what it transpired to be, and what that ERG was really about. And more importantly too, as we're speaking to our audiences from all over the world, and different organizations that are trying to take some advice, what can we tell them about that to make things happen for their employees?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking. This specific ERG started at LinkedIn back in, it was like late 2013, early 2014. And I first got involved as a member of it in San Francisco. And then, as you mentioned, was the global comms chair for about a year and a half across 2017 and in 2018. And at LinkedIn, we have 10 total ERGs, of which Outed In is one. There's also BIG, the Black Inclusion Group. There's OLA, Hispanics of LinkedIn Alliance. We have a new one I just learned about that I'm excited about, because I also qualify as Wisdom at LinkedIn for 40 plus employees. And all of our ERGs are organized around two main pillars of development and recognition and community engagement. And Outed In specifically sits in that community engagement pillar. And the mission is to promote and support LinkedIn as an LGBTQIA plus friendly employer where members can succeed professionally and personally. And so for me, it was really important to get involved when the ERG started, because also seeking for that community, that community at work, and then also, doubly to get involved to help the ERG grow, so that I, could play an actual role in helping other employees feel like that they belong. And I really think ERGs are so vital for creating that sense of community, and also psychological safety within organizations. And we just, and I can share this link with you after if attendees would be interested, but LinkedIn News just published an article based on a survey we did of just over 2,000 LGBTQIA plus identified professionals, and just about a quarter were not open about their identity in the workplace, and almost half kind of feared outing themselves during the job search process. And that's that's huge, and ERGs can really play a way, play a pivotal role in helping those folks to feel like they belong. And also for organizations, it has a downstream detrimental impact on your overall business if you're not attracting top talent or retaining them once they come in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. There's tons of research, and I think even in the McKinsey report that discusses this, that there's this fear to really share a lot about their identity and during the interview process, but even after they start working, right? And especially among the women and the trans in the community. So yeah, absolutely. Please share that link with us. We'd be happy to provide it to our audience as well. So I have a question for you that's related to ERGs, but also the networking space and your background in branding and building that that experience. What and with that, your approach to human-centered design too, which I think is all kind of intertwined. In what ways can you share with our companies that they can support more holistically, specifically for Pride Month? And it could be through the ERGs, but also like holistically speaking throughout.
That's a great question, and I think honestly it's a really important one. So I think a couple of responses to that. On the ERG front, there's a way where, and I've seen this happen at LinkedIn and other organizations too, where your ERGs and the employees who are a member can intersect with your talent branding and talent attraction strategies. And I'll give you an example. Back when I was the comms chair, so I think it was around Pride, I think it was Pride 2018, we did this campaign that the ERG led, where employees who were willing and wanted to just share their experiences in coming out and being out in the workplace. So it not only gave those employees a voice, it also sent a signal to perhaps other employees at LinkedIn who maybe aren't out, that hey, it's okay to be out here. And it also, for the company and the organization, it helps with the talent brand, because you've got employees who identify as a member of the LGBTQIA plus community sharing their authentic story, right? And then taking that a step further, if we're going to go deeper into talent attraction and recruitment marketing strategies, that's something that I firmly believe in is really important to, and not only for employees again who are willing to share their authentic lived experiences and life experiences basically, but also, and this is where some of what I focused on in the Parsons program is co-creating with them, right? And so looking at them as some of the end users to co-create those stories and campaigns, and that really will resonate out there.
I love that. I think that's great advice, in utilizing the employees also within, right, to make that impact, and incorporating and collaborating with them. I think that's excellent advice. In relation to that, what additional feedback or perspective do you have for those that are joining us today, that may perhaps want to improve the cultures of their own companies and promote that level of empathy and understanding and inclusion externally? And it could be something through their social media channels or websites beyond just Pride Month, right? Throughout the year, it's not just one year that we're trying to be included and make sure that we recognize the LGBTQIA plus community, but in general and throughout the year.
No, it's also a powerful question, and thank you for it. I think there's a few things. One, in sort of zooming out and looking outside of June of Pride Month, I think it's really important to again walk the talk, and what I mean by that. And I'll give you an example. I was prepping for this the last couple of days, and literally it was serendipitous. While I was prepping, got an alert from Google Chrome for Business Insider, and it was an article basically calling out certain companies who are pro LGBTQIA plus, but funnel money toward lawmakers who supported restrictive bills in Arkansas targeting trans youth, right? So it's really goes beyond just supporting the community through having rainbow logos and everything during Pride Month, but really looking at where your money going, what policies you support, and then internally, I really think it's important to also put strong policies in place to promote inclusion and equity within the company. And as you mentioned too, yes, making sure that members of the LGBTQIA plus community in your organization have equal access to opportunity, but even more specifically, I would say bringing in some intersectionality, queer people of color, and especially women of color. And then also, giving employees the resources, not only through those ERG groups for the employees themselves, but I think also allyship is really important. Engaging key allies really helps that sense of belonging and an inclusive culture to go even further.
That is excellent advice, and I love that you tapped into the allyship, and that's what we're here for today as well, right? This is part of the support that we do, and I want to congratulate you as well as LinkedIn in particular, because they're taking a major step forward. I mean, just recently it was announced that they are now compensating for the head of the ERGs in particular, and I think that's fascinating. It just speaks to the level of commitment, and it's something that a lot of our audience members here or the decision makers in their companies can probably walk away from it inspired. So, Mark, thank you. I can talk to you for hours.
You're welcome, Selma.
Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you. Appreciate it.